What's up, y'all? DT2 Comics Chat here for our Comics Crusaders special podcast. You won't believe who I have the pleasure of interviewing today. None other than Mr. John Wesley Shipp himself. How you doing, Mr. Shipp?
I'm very well, David. How are you?
Fine, fine. Thank you. Well, we're going to jump right on into the questions. First thing I want to ask you is, how do you compartmentalize as an actor? Like getting to your headspace, like you're Barry Allen in the 90s, and then you're his dad, and then you're Jay. How do you work that out in terms of your process?
I take almost everything I need from the script. The good thing about coming back to the new CW version of The Flash was that the origin story was so different. You know, how Jeff Johns had, I call it, blown up the Allen family, how suddenly Henry was wrongfully convicted of killing his wife in front of his 10-year-old son. You know, that wasn't my origin story in 1990. And when I heard that that was the new version of Henry Allen and that his son was the only one who believed he was innocent and was on a lifelong mission to vindicate his father, I thought, if they come to me, that's the role I would want, not Jay Garrick off the bat, because I felt that would be on the nose. I would feel like I was comparing myself to myself 24 years earlier, you know. But I also figured that it would give me and Grant a very special, almost private, personal place in the middle of this great big action adventure show to accomplish what the fans wanted me to accomplish, which was to hand off the franchise to a new Barry Allen, but to do it in a way that was not on the nose, that was in the form of a father-son blessing, you know, and participating in that way with Grant, being as fond as I am of him, both as an actor and as a human being, you know, it was special. Not only as Henry to Barry, but as John to Grant, because those two things, the way the scenes were beautifully written, those two things often overlapped. Sometimes we didn't know who was this, John talking to Grant, old Flash, new Flash, or was this Henry talking to his son, or was it some combination of all three? So it really invested those scenes, I think, with an impact that they otherwise wouldn't have had.
Wow. Now, see, all felt as fans because The Flash, especially the first season, was a show about fathers and sons. Barry had three dads. He had a science dad, he had his bio dad, and he had his stepdad. But what you're saying, see, what you're talking about, we felt coming through the screen, and the gravitas from yourself and Jesse and Tom Cavanaugh is really what hooked us into the show. So that's incredible to hear a process because it was real, actually really real. That's incredible. Speaking of that, I will pivot to this question. How did you feel then about the crisis episode where Barry Allen must die and it turned out to be your Barry Allen from the 90s? Because you know that's from 1985's Crisis book.
Absolutely.
So how did you feel about that? I guess kind of a send-off to that version of the Flash.
Well, it was funny how it came about. They told me, I live in New York City, so they told me that they were sending a crew to scan me digitally for a new suit the summer before the Elseworlds crossover. And I thought, oh, great, Jay Garrick's getting a new suit. Great, I can't wait to see it. And then I saw the drawings and I was like, wait a minute. What suit are we talking about here? And they said, oh, it's the Flash 90 suit for the crossover. And I was like, what? I said, you know, that was 28 years ago, right? And then I had to get a couple things straight. I said, I'm not going to be going back pretending that it was 28 years ago, right? I mean, these 28 years will have elapsed. I'm that character 28 years later. They said, oh, yeah. And then I was quite nervous about it, actually, because I didn't know how people would react. I didn't know how the cast would react. So the first time I enter Elseworlds to give them that information with the cast there, the Arrow cast, the Flash, everybody's there.
Mm-hmm.
And the reception and the reaction from the cast was unbelievable. I mean, there's Grant saying, "This is the coolest thing we've ever done," and the reaction of the audience was so welcoming and so enthusiastic that, my fears and my concerns were alleviated. Knowing the way they write, I knew they weren't doing it as a one-off. I knew that they had something in mind. And when we came to the end of the season and they said, "Coming next season, Crisis on Infinite Earths," I went, that's why.
Yeah.
A Flash must die in Crisis.
Right.
That's why.
Right.
And so I had a conversation with Eric Wallace, and I just wanted to make sure, because anytime I said, I figure that the seeds planted in Elseworlds, that you guys are asking me to come back to kill my Barry Allen.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to have a conversation about what some of your thoughts are about how you want to do this. I said, I wouldn't want to come back and, for example, not that you would ever do this, but I wouldn't want to come back and kill this character I've been associated with for so many years, like in one scene. And he said, "Oh, we would never do that. We have much too much respect for you, for what came before, for the legacy. You will be very much a part of the problem solving. And you, in fact, will die a hero's death." And I have to tell you, it was quite often, and I'm not alone, I think, as an actor, when I do something, the first time I see it, particularly if it's soon after I've done it, I'm devastated. I hate it. I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I sound. Nothing that I wanted to accomplish, I feel I achieved. I leave the room, I go in the bedroom, I'll never act again. I mean, invariably it happens, even though I know when I watch it a week later, I'll go, okay, well, it wasn't as bad as I thought, as it was. Not with Crisis. I sat down and I watched it from beginning to end, the way it was written. Sterling Gates was on set. He said when he was writing The Death of Flash 90, he was weeping at the typewriter, knowing that Andrew Kreisberg, Greg Berlanti, Jeff Johns, David Nutter, David McWhirter had all grown up on the 90s show, that they had an emotional investment in Flash 90. And the way it was written, the fact that nothing was by accident. If we go back and watch Crisis, the shots of Grant, you see me out of focus in almost every shot of Grant. The fact that I had the great honor of welcoming Black Lightning, that I'm getting goosebumps right now.
Wow.
The fact that I had that moment of saying, you have given us the time that we need. And we cannot, the fact that I had that moment with Cress, was one of the highlights of my entire time coming back to the CW show. And the fact that it wasn't sentimentalized. It was like, yeah, you learned some neat tricks if you've been at this speedster game long enough. I'm going to steal your speed, my sacrifice to make, come on, Vibe, open the portal, get me on. You want your friend to die, then get me in there, my world is destroyed. I find out that Tina and I did get married. She's gone now. And then with a nod and a wink, not sentimental, I get on the treadmill. Keep riding the Lightning Kid, And then they pulled a fast one on me. When I went to looping, they said, "We have a surprise for you in looping." I'm like, another one? And I'm there, and the scene is playing, and I'm running on the treadmill, and I hear my voice from 30 years ago saying, "I have faith in you, Tina." And then cut to my face 30 years ago, and then cut to Amanda Pays from 1990. "I have faith in you too, Barry." And then cut back to my current CW 1990 Flash on the treadmill, running and dissolving, so that they made it so I knew what I was running toward as well as what I was running away from.
Mm-hmm.
And what was music to my ears was the critic who said, with the way it was written, the way it was directed, the way it was shot, the way it was edited, the music choices, everything all together turned what could have been a harrowing moment into a triumphant one. And I was like, yes. And it's one of those only times in my career, very few times in my 43-year career and counting, that I've watched something without moving, taking it all in and going, I wouldn't change a thing. Wouldn't change a thing.
Wow. Well, as you know, the crisis in the comics, the death of Barry Allen and Supergirl reverberated throughout comics, and it has impact still to this day. And just to let you know, from a fan point of view, we felt that. We felt that that was an honorable, like it was one of those things where no one could have done that but you. And no, seriously. And it was an honorable send-off because it honored everything that, because all that, what they said to you is what we felt too. That we grew up watching it, we read the comics and all that. And that was, only you could have done that. And it was done with such respect because that is who Barry is. Barry's the kind of guy that says, if I need to make the sacrifice play, I will. You know, the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the one. So no, you nailed it.
There you go.
So you, from a fan point of view, you absolutely nailed it. And we were all kind of stunned. Like when we saw the scene, we were like, did that just, because we knew it was coming, but still. So yeah, no, you pulled it off. It gave it the
David,
weight and the gravitas.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
thank
yeah,
you so much.
No, you definitely did it. Now, let me go from that to saying this. Now, I'm going to try to control the fanboying as I say it. I'm really going to try and tamp it down. I'm just keeping it real with you, Mr. Shipp.
Come on, let's go there. Let's go there.
I have got to know, we all need to know, how did you feel the first time you put on the Jay Garrick outfit and that helmet? See, because you played two iconic Flashes. You played the original Flash and you played Barry Flash. And so the first time we saw you, everybody got real quiet. Everybody was like, wow, like you could hear a pin drop. I was like, he's really Jay Garrick. See, that's how I know you've studied your character so much, because you didn't look like Henry. You look like Jay. And so how did it feel to you when you saw yourself in the mirror? You're like, I'm Jay Garrick up in this mug.
Well, you know, it was interesting because Henry and Barry, and by extension Grant and John, had developed such an intimacy over the course of 2 seasons playing those beautiful scenes. I knew that when I came out of that iron mask, I think the line was originally written, everyone's looking at me. And I think my line was, is something wrong? And I said, that's what Henry would say.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, well, what do you want to say? I said, well, I come out of the mask and everybody's looking at me like I have 2 heads. What? You know, that's what Jay would say, I felt. But resetting that character was a challenge for me and Grant. In the first of all, of course, I was nervous. Again, you know, I'm so many years later. I'm in a new superhero suit. You know, I don't know. I can't really see myself. But this is who the Flash cast is. Okay, I'm there, and I put on the helmet. And Grant is like, I look over and there's they know I'm nervous. There's Candace smiling, giving me a thumbs up off camera. Grant pulls the camera forward, turns the monitor around and says, see how cool you look? I mean, they just wrapped me up, you know, and carried me through that whole moment. Now, the challenge for us, I pull him out of the Speed Force. I'm not the soft shoulder for him to lean his head on anymore. Jay has no emotional, in our storytelling at the beginning, has no emotional investment. He doesn't know who this kid is. What are you gonna change the timeline every time you have a fight with your girlfriend? What kind of hero? Yeah, I look like your dead dad. Sorry about that. But here's the deal. What kind of hero are you gonna be? Suddenly the temperature was much colder. And when Grant and I were outside of that coffee shop running those lines, and I'm hitting him with this attitude, at one point, he just put his head down and just started laughing. I said, man, what are you laughing at? He said, it's so weird. It's, I'm so used to getting something so different from you that playing this scene, it's absolutely the way it has to be. But it's such an adjustment. And I have to tell you, those Henry Berry scenes were so yummy, and it was so beautiful to show up and play, because I knew there was going to be a payoff. I knew there was going to be an emotional cleansing. I knew there was going to be, nothing but love, that when it was no longer that, I knew I had to get to the point where there was a Jay Berry relationship that fans had respected. I had to respect the legacy, but I couldn't start there. It couldn't start as a team. I had to start here, so that by the time I take Wally's place in the Speed Force and I give him the helmet to find his way out, and I put my hand on his chest and I say, be the Flash. Okay, now we're there. But we had to get there by degree. How did it feel? I felt lifted up, and I felt like, well, I've been preparing to play this role for 28 years.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that has come before, even my side journey voicing Professor Zoom, my entire history with this franchise over 28 years has led me to this moment. And I really did feel, and I hope it doesn't sound arrogant, I really did feel that I was particularly situated as a result of those set of circumstances to play that character in a way that I couldn't have been if all the history hadn't been what it was. If I hadn't, dragged my ass through 22 episodes with no CGI, live action practical effects in 1990 in the suit, sweating, it's like, all the challenges of creating superhero television then versus now.
Mm-hmm.
If I hadn't had that experience, if I didn't know what some of the hopes and dreams, some of the insecurities that Grant might have, taking on this iconic role, if I didn't know all of that, if I hadn't played Henry and had the intimacy with him as an actor and as a character,
Mm-hmm.
it all prepared me to play my version of Jay Garrick. It's like the homework was done, David, right?
Right.
There was 30 years of homework.
Well, again, it comes through. I want you to know that your teacup explanation about time travel is a Flash classic. So that's a point that all the fans reference. But see, it was how can I put it? It was the power of your experience that comes through when you're trying to let somebody know this is what you're playing with. Because, it's one of the biggest theories in geekdom sci-fi, if time travel was real. But the way you communicated it was, I know this, I've done this. This is not the thing to do. You need to learn how to respect, your speed and all that. Because what people don't understand is the analogies to real life. The characters are fictional. The situations are fictional, but the emotions and the principles are real. And that's like a father telling a son, listen, son, you know, you're going to have to live with your choices. You're not going to be able to go back and undo and erase. And my father talked to me that way. I talked to my son that way. See, that's the power of that moment. We feel it. We really feel it. And it came through. So once again, now, just to let you know, and also to ask you, there are 2 shows we would love. And I wanted to know if anybody ever brought them up to you. We would love a JSA show with you as Jay. We thought that's what Stargirl was going to spin off into. So we would love to see you in the classic JSA, 1. 2, did anybody ever mention like a full Flash family show with like the Tornado Twins and Bart and Jenny? Like you had almost everybody on that show, but like maybe in the future where Iris was from. So there was at least 2 shows we wanted to see. And we definitely thought that you were going to headline a JSA show because we were ready for it, man. I'm telling you, we were like, they have to do this because we've been salivating for the JSA in live action for a very long time.
You know, it's interesting. When I went over to Stargirl, there were fans who wrote me, audience members who wrote me and said, we felt like you were even more Jay Garrick on Stargirl, even than you were on Flash. Mm-hmm. And I thought about it and I said, I think I can explain that because we see Jay on Flash as a mentor, as an advisor to the Justice League. When I walked into that garage on Stargirl, I was walking into my seat of authority. That was the Justice Society. Mm-hmm. That was Jay Garrick, the moral center of his society, about to make a decision, the ramifications of which he knew were going to blow the society apart. Mm-hmm. So the gravitas of that moment, I think, caused me to be a version of Jay that I hadn't gotten to play. I was so excited. The original version of the end of season 3, where I come streaking through and split the table open and Shade is there. And mm-hmm. I'm like going, because, you know, Jeff Johns wrote 2 endings because he didn't want to leave the audience or the cast hanging in the event they didn't get a 4th season.
Okay.
The original version was, I've gone too far. I've gone too far. And he's like, well, what are you talking about? Where are you going to? I have to go back to the moment when Courtney Whitmore first got the staff and you're coming with me, I said to Shade, which set me up for that whole journey had there been a Stargirl season 4. You know,
we were waiting on it, man. We were waiting.
It would have happened.
Wow.
It would have happened.
Wow. Because those are also characters we've loved for a very long time and have never really seen them realized in live action. And once again, you lead the way. You know, Jay's the center. Yeah. And people that don't read comics don't know that Barry got his inspiration from Jay. He's the one that Barry looked at to decide to become the Scarlet Speedster. Now, in terms of that other stuff, what we thought was going to happen on the main Flash was that they were going to have the last season in the just to be crazy for a minute, if I had written it, Iris would have disappeared because most people don't know that Iris West is from the future and that she was hidden in the past. And then Thawne actually kills her. Her parents retrieve her, take her back home. Barry finds her there, and then they have the Tornado Twins in the future. That's what I thought the last season of The Flash would have been, and I was going to include Max Mercury. But I mean, it would have been everybody. It would have been Max Mercury, Bart, the Tornado Twins, just everybody. That's where we thought that was going, because if we have this really, really powerful moment and Nora is born and everybody's feeling good and Caitlin's back, and then Iris is just gone, then we could have spent the whole last season going to the future, seeing her true origin, meeting her true parents and why they trusted the West. I mean, there was just so much there. And once again, you and Max, as the most experienced speedsters, can say, okay, Barry, if you want to get out of this and you want to get back to 2023 and not tear up the timeline, we need to train you on how to do this. Because in Flashpoint, Thawne said, It was because Barry's time traveling was so sloppy, he tore up the fabric of reality. So once again, I thought it was a perfect alley-oop for both you and a Max Mercury level character in the future to spend a whole season saying this, you gotta master this, you gotta master this. So was there ever talk of anything like that? Because that's how I would have wrote it.
There wasn't talk specifically of that. In terms of the legacy, I think if there's a superhero, you know, I don't have to tell you this, that legacy is important to, it's the Flash. You know,
Yes,
from
yes.
Jay Garrick, World War II, fighting Nazis, got all the way to the forward through Barry, through Wally, through Bart, through, you know, and I was hoping, as in the comics, that I would get to mentor Wally.
Okay, uh-huh.
That didn't happen. They decided to write Tom Cavanaugh's character mentoring him the wrong way, you know, instead. Then we had another chance when they brought on Jordan Fisher
Mm-hmm.
as Bart.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that. I loved that. And the investment that Jordan brought to how much he loved Jay
Uh-huh.
blew me away. I didn't have to act at all. If he hadn't sold that the way he did, it
Uh-huh.
wouldn't have worked. Now, I think they would have written to that. When we did the scenes where I'm bringing the big belly burger in, and we're having the discussion, I'm saying, okay, now what's going on here? And they're like, oh my God, you're alive. And I'm like, okay, right. Because I don't realize what he's talking about. Are you okay, son? You know,
Mm-hmm.
David McWhirter, again, who directed Crisis, directed that episode. And he was like, you three, this is such an interesting dynamic.
Yes.
Nora and Bart and Jay. I wonder if this is where the show is headed. Now, I think the fact that Jordan was a new father, his family is in New York, and he was the lead in a Broadway play, you know, did not necessarily lend itself to him being available. And in a very few episodes, he put such a stamp on that character. They
Mm-hmm.
couldn't have recast Bart. You know, I was really hoping that that would continue. What was originally told to me, that Bart and his father Barry would have some friction,
Mm-hmm.
and that he was closer to his uncle Jay than he was the friction, which would then cause friction between Jay and Barry. You know, I also had wondered if they had gone the Jay mentoring Wally route, it would have set up a very interesting dynamic, because uh, Joe had raised Barry from the age of 10 to adulthood and was his second father. And when I get out of prison and I'm questioning him, can you be all that you need to be with me here? Hoping he'll say yes. He doesn't say yes. He says, well, you're the only family I got. And then I look over and I see Joe West standing right over there. And I say, that's not really true, is it? What if uh, Henry's doppelganger became closer with Wally than Joe was? Now we have the reverse. Now, do we have tension between Joe and uh, Jay?
Mm-hmm.
If Wally is looking to Jay to mentor him, a reflection of how close Barry, Henry's son, was to Joe. And I want to say another word about Grant at this point, because you talked about his different fathers. I was so impressed. And when people go back and watch the show again, notice the way Grant played his scenes with me, as opposed to the way he played his scenes with Jesse. I raised him from birth to 10 years old, right? When he came to Henry in the prison, he was an open wound. He was vulnerable. he was a child. Qualitatively, Joe raised him from 10 into a young adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
Both relationships, the Henry Barry and the Joe Barry, were equally important in Barry's life. The way he played them was very different and reflected the fact that Henry was his father from birth to 10, and Joe was his father from 10 to young adulthood. And I thought, that's an actor. He differentiated
Yes.
the
Yeah.
way he played the scenes with his two fathers.
Well, what we wanted both from the CW show and the movie was justice for Henry. We've been screaming for years, how does Thawne go back in time and kill Nora, and then it becomes a fixed point in time? None of us have ever understood why there was no answer for that. So I'm like, we at least need to get some justice for Henry Allen because he didn't do anything. So they kind of dealt with that in the movie, but that's been.
May I tell you
Uh-huh.
the things that could have happened? Our executive producers at the beginning were Jeff Johns, Greg Berlanti, and Andrew Kreisberg.
Uh-huh.
And then Andrew left. Andrew's plan, I could hardly say it without salivating, was to do the trial of Henry Allen.
Wow. Wow, that would have been something right there.
Not have him just go, okay, you're exonerated, get out of jail free.
Uh-huh.
That there would need to be a trial. And he wanted to tell that story. And I thought, wow, what a different show.
No, that would have been, yeah, no, that would have been a completely different show. But it was the catharsis that we needed for all that we had gone through. Because again, you know, Zoom messed Barry's life up. They changed the backstory of the Flash in the comics because the Flashes have always been the happiest family in DC. Jay and Joan, Barry and Iris, Wally and Linda have always loved each other, solid couples. And so they changed it and added a little bit more tragedy in that. And we were like, okay, but we need some justice. We need some resolution because Thawne just can't be able to do that, you know. So I thought it was interesting the way they tied it into the particle accelerator and him needing to become the Flash. But we wanted to see you as Henry. We wanted some real, this man didn't do this, give him his life back.
Justice for Henry.
Yeah.
Got that was truncated. That was truncated. And when I found out that Barry's been trying to get me out, I'm finally vindicated. I get out, and on the day I get out of prison, I come home, and during my welcome home party, I announced that I'm leaving.
Yeah.
That went through so many versions because at first it was like, okay, how are we going to get, you know, is it going to be that I wanted to visit places that Nora and I never got to visit together? And I remember having these conversations with Andrew and saying, it's got to be I said, it's going to be a very hard sell. It's going to be a very hard sell. The only way that we can even come close is if Henry believes on some level that him leaving is the best thing for Barry.
Okay.
And then I looked at the episode. The entire episode was about Barry can't get close to the people he loves because it puts them in peril. And so, whereas the initial version had me saying, you can't be all you need to be with me here, I was like, what if Henry's feeling it out? Henry sees that Barry is isolating from the people he loves because, in other words, the people he loves are preventing him from being all that he can be, and being all that he can be is preventing him from getting close to the people that he loves. However, his dad gets out. He's ready to throw all that over. Man, we're going to get a room together. We're going to have pizza night. We're going to go to the minute. Henry knows better, and he's feeling him out. First of all, I said, we have to see that Henry doesn't want to have this conversation at his coming home party. He tries to dodge it 6 ways to Sunday. He finally pins me down. And I turned it into a question. It all comes down to this. Can you be who you need to be with me here? And I tried to invest that question with Henry, hoping he'll say, yes, I can. But he doesn't. He sidesteps. Well, you're the only family I have. And that lets Henry know what he has to do. For Barry to be everything that he needs to be, he has to complete the handoff to Joe West and step out of the picture.
Okay, well then I must tell you, hearing it from the inside out from you, I see it differently now. Because that's not how I saw it when I watched it. When I watched it, it felt like a blow to my sternum. I was like, what did you say? You know, because I inserted myself on either side of that conversation. I was like, what did you say?
I know. At the end of working it out, I said, and we finally got a version that I felt like I could truthfully do. Whether it was going to read to the audience, I had no idea. But I had to hammer out a version that I could believe. And I could believe what I've just described. At the end of hammering all that out, I said, now, Andrew, this is a good version. You know we're not going to get away with this, right? You know we're not going to get away. He said, I know. He said, but what's the alternative? Have Henry sitting at home, reading the newspaper? Or are you going back to the crime lab, Barry? They didn't see, with everything else they had, and there being such a large Flash team in the CW Flash, they didn't really see how they could integrate me or write for me without putting me. What I loved about the way they used me, David, was whenever they brought me back, it was for a meaningful purpose. It was Flash 90 and Elseworld giving them the information about the book that they needed at the moment they needed it. It was him coming back for Christ. It was Jay Garrick showing up and explaining the Speed Force with the cup. Every time I showed up, I was there at a peak moment to deliver information. And I'm so grateful you said it, that only I could have delivered. And to have me be more of a semi-regular hanging around as Henry, I get why they needed, plus the plans they had for Barry and Joe, which was the existing relationship, that they needed for Henry. I wouldn't have wanted to be there sitting on the sofa in my underwear, eating pizza and talking to Barry. You know what I mean?
Right, I do know what you mean. Well, I understand it better now that you explain it from the inside out. That makes a lot more sense.
I shouldn't. See, that's the failure. I shouldn't have had to. It was such a tricky thing to navigate. At that point, it's like, okay, someone gives you something and it's tantamount to being thrown into the middle of a lake and you don't know how to swim. And I'm there treading water, just trying to come up with a version, because if I can't believe it, I can't play it.
We as an audience, especially longtime comic fans, again, are very used to the joyful, happy, stable Flash thing. So that's why it was such a pivot from what we're seeing, because, Barry's parents, and every time we see you and Nora as a couple in any version that you're in, that works so well. And so that's what I mean when I say, when you play an iconic character or you create one like the Star Trek people, there's a weight, if there's a history that comes with it. And we know Flashes are family oriented. We know the parents have the kinds of marriages that you envy. We know that Barry gets that good nature, that lightheartedness, because Flashes served with a smile and a wink. They're never frowning. They're always happy to help people, that kind of thing. And that energy that you have when you're with Michelle in any form comes through. And so that's what we were used to. So having Henry be like, well, no, I think I'm kind of out. And then he gets killed later. I'm like, what? But again, you saying it, I get it now. Is just, it was just not really what we were expecting.
I know. I hope knowing, and there again, if something really works,
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't have to explain it. We did the best we could, given the fact that we had to get Henry out of the picture. But go back and watch the party scenes now, knowing the calculations that I was making in my head, and see if hopefully it reads, makes a little bit more sense.
No, I get it. I get it. A fifth wheel is not going to work with the setup that you had. So no, I get it now. Also, let me say, then I got two more questions and I'll let you go. Also, let me say, we thought, when I say we, I mean fans, we thought you guys were going to introduce Captain Marvel on the show.
Hello.
Once you brought Ezra in, and Ezra and Grant had scenes together, and we saw that we're now merging the multiverse. We thought, because, I wrote my headcanon, and I'm like, Iris is investigating missing children. And one of those children turns out to be Billy Batson, the Batson family. And Iris says, Barry, you have to help me with this, because Cap and Flash have a lot in common, the colors, the lightheartedness, the speed powers. And we thought it was going to be a tie-in to the films. I'm like, don't y'all see that the Flash CW is the perfect platform to introduce Captain Marvel? And with the Flash cast, everything about what we knew about them would work with Iris wanting to fight for children that are being kidnapped, because that's the whole backstory. And I'm like, wait a minute. So anyway, that's just more fan stuff.
David, this is what I love about working in this medium. And this is what I love about going to conventions. I learn as much or more than I reveal. You know what I mean? Because the audience is so schooled and knowledgeable and steeped in the legacy of who these people are, And when something's not right. When it goes against, or when you're being put on. When someone's being dishonest with you, when they're dangling something just to try to give you some kind of fan service without building the platform. When you're being put on, and performing for such a knowledgeable audience is not only a great responsibility, but it's a huge privilege. And to hear you talk about these things and being invested in the intricacies of the story and the legacy of the history, it's very exciting for me.
Well, I grew up reading comics, and my father is the one that introduced me to them. And the thing about it is the optimism, the imagination of a child, the possibilities, the things you can do is what superheroes represent, their wish fulfillment, that I can be more than I am now, that I can make a difference, that I can spend the one life I have, but make the world around me better. The characters are fictional, but that mantra, that ideology is very, very real. And that's so epitomized in the various versions of the Flash family. Now, let me ask you this. Have you played your dream role, or is that still in front of you? Like, if you could wave a magic wand and play absolutely any role you want to play, have you done that already? Or is that something yet to come?
When we start out in this business, we have visions of the kind of career beyond our wildest dreams.
Yes.
Have I had a career beyond my wildest dreams? No, because I dream big. And I'm incredibly grateful to be having one. You know what I mean?
I do.
I have gotten to play superheroes and psychopaths. Both of my daytime Emmys are for. I think I was stabbed in the back with a crystal cylinder trying to rape Julianne Moore on As the World Turns. You know,
Wow.
I beat up and was thrown through a plate glass window by A. Martinez and Marcy Walker, and a woman abuser for my second Emmy on Santa Barbara. You
Mhm.
know, then I go on to play a superhero. Then I go on to play not the brightest bulb on the tree, but a very loving dad on Dawson's Creek.
Uh-huh.
Loves his son.
Mhm.
Then I go to play a genius dad, a heart surgeon, father of Barry, very smart, also very loving. Then I go play the sickest, darkest psycho dad that it's hard for me to watch in season 2 of Teen Wolf for
Mhm.
MTV
Mhm.
with Daniel Sharman. And to go back, I've been in the Tony Award winning play on Broadway, Dancing at Lunasa, playing a Welsh wastrel, as they describe it in the play by Brian Friel. I've been able to do enough different to wrap my mind and stretch my imagination out to such limits, from superheroes to psychopaths,
Mhm.
that I'm just grateful. I'm getting ready to go back on stage in North Carolina to do A Few Good Men
Wow.
at the Judson Theater in Pinehurst, North Carolina, where I did 12 Angry Men about 5 years ago. So getting my feet back on stage. The rest of the cast will be announced. In fact, I may have just spoiled something. I'm not sure the theater has announced that it'll be me, but it will be. And yeah, so I wouldn't say, I've sort of taken the roles as they've come.
Mhm.
And whether it was 5 minutes of rehearsal at the very end of One Life to Live being on TV, very last week, in daytime, or the Tony Award winning play on Broadway, or playing a superhero or a psychopath, primetime independent film, never ending story, whatever it was, to invest whatever I do with the same kind of enthusiasm and commitment to trying to find myself in whatever character I've been given to play, and to offer it with respect and affection to the audience. Because if you don't have that, stay home, you know. And that's what was so wonderful about the Flash. You talk about the first 2 seasons of the Flash cast, and
Mhm.
that entire cast, everybody was working overtime to find the reality and the truth of these people within the extraordinary given circumstances that we were given. You talk about that coffee cup scene. The quote I'm most often asked to write on this guy, Jay Garrick Pop, is
After Funko Pop.
is we're not gods, we're men.
Uh-huh.
We're not gods, we're men who, for whatever reason, have been given extraordinary abilities. And this is what I say to my convention audiences. We all have, and I heard it described once, a vein of gold. Every person on earth has a vein of gold. Superheroes, it's larger than life, but everybody has something that they see, understand, feel, do in a unique way, different from anybody else. And the process, as you said, inspired by superheroes, the
Mhm.
thing that you can do to find your vein of gold, which is going to infuse and embody your environment and your surroundings, and hopefully make this great big mess that we find ourselves living in a little better.
Well, that is actually the fate of the Flash in Kingdom Come. He becomes so fast he can't slow down. So he
Mm,
patrols the city 24/7. Yeah, so
mm,
fast that no one can see him, but he's stopping crime and people don't know. And on Earth 2 Flash, when they rebooted it, they actually gave the dying god Mercury, granted his powers to the new Jay Garrick. So they
mm,
actually took the powers of a god and put it in a man. And then he had to balance. It's just what you said. He's like, I have these powers, but I'm a guy. So what am I going to do? So yeah, no, we've seen that dynamic and it really works. Okay, let me ask you this, and then we'll talk about your current appearances. Last question. Tell me the funniest story from the Flash set that you can tell me.
Well, I would say the most unusual thing, I was all there for the first couple of episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the cast was all getting to know each other. We all went to San Diego Comic-Con, everyone was in the same state of getting to know each other for the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I went away for several episodes. And then I came back and I walked into a group scene. Here's Jesse Martin and Grant Gustin over here learning a new tap dance step. Jesse was showing Grant something, and Grant was saying, well, how about this? Okay, here comes Carlos. Here comes Tom Cavanaugh giving Carlos a ride in his wheelchair, and they're popping wheelies in the wheelchair over here. Somebody, I don't know what was going on over here. I forget what Candace was doing. And I'm looking at this cast that has now fully bonded and have gone on beyond where I left them several episodes before, saying, what on earth have I just stepped back into the middle of? So that's the thing that immediately comes to mind.
That fun energy, we felt it too. All right, well, let us know where your latest appearances are going to be, your current appearances, where we can come see you in person, get some stuff signed, maybe get some pictures.
Right on. I will be July 28th through the 30th in Uncasville, Connecticut at the Mohegan Sun, the big casino there. It's Terrificon is what it's called, Mitch Halleck's Terrificon. I'll be in Fairfax, Virginia in August. I'll be in Savannah, Georgia in September. Then I go to do the play. I may be going back to Ecuador because, I've done Comic-Cons in Lima, in Ecuador, in Santiago, Chile, in Paris, in London, all over. But those are my immediate appearances for the rest of the year. And then I step back as I get involved in the play. So it's Terrificon, and then it's Fairfax, Virginia, and then it's Savannah. I think they're calling it Superstar Con now in September. Oh, I'll also be at GalaxyCon Austin the beginning of September, Texas, and then I go into the play.
Great. Well, we will let the fans know because we know there's a bunch of people that want to come see you. I'm definitely going to come see you in person at some point, especially come back.
David, I hope so. This has been a
I'm
great conversation.
Oh yeah, I've loved it too. I'm in Chicago, so definitely if you come here, I would definitely come see you and meet you in person because you are a true hero. Okay, the reason we love you so, you've demonstrated in this interview with the thought, the preparation, the heart, the respect. You use that word several times. And you're someone who understands the assignment because you bring your whole self to your craft. And I just want you to know as a fan, it comes through. It really comes through. And that's why we've loved watching your career for years, because we can feel your passion. We can feel your love. We can feel your care for the character you're trying to display. So I just want you to know you really are a hero in our hearts.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this Comic Crusaders production. For real-time news on all things pop culture, please feel free to follow us on social media. For articles, original content, merchandise, and more, please go to www.comiccrusaders.com. Also follow along with all of the websites of the Comic Crusaders family. As always, if you like this content, please click like and subscribe to the Comic Crusaders YouTube channel.